All right. We're going to talk about death and dying today. Finally, we get to talk about it. It's an extraordinary topic. And to me, it is a joyful topic. I'm going to be 80. Woo, yeah. My sister was kicked out of hospice 4 times. She's still alive. 95. So we don't always go when we want to, but we do have a date that is our own, and we will go when the Lord is ready for us. And you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. Hospice came to our house. Some of you may not know, my husband died on March last year, the 8th of March. And hospice came to our house in January. They're wonderful. You want hospice if you're home and you want to pass there. And it's more fun because you do things that you might not get to do if you're in a hospital. So we had a lot of fun. We had fun for 4 years actually, dealing with death and dying. And we were very blessed. We prayed, Bill and I prayed together for years and years and years. We were married for 60 years. We were together for 2 years before that, and I can't say that we were praying. But we were having a lot of fun. And so it was just a huge blessing for us to get together, to be at home, have our family in and out and in and out, and have pastor come do the prayers. But we prayed together every night. If you're not praying together, I recommend it. One of you can pray and the other one can say amen. If there's one that prefers, Bill always did amen. Hospice used to be, I was on the board for hospice about 30 years ago. And cheers, right here. I was on the board, actually home for about a year because I had boards to serve on. But in those days, hospice was about dying, just dying. And the definition of dying is process. Dying is a process. Whether you have injuries or whether you have disease, your body is going down and down and down. Death is leaving your body. We'll talk more about that. So my sister got kicked out 4 times, and she's still here. So what hospice does now is they care for you and they do everything to make you comfortable. But the goal is to live as long as your body wants you to live. But do it with comfort. Okay? You don't have to take a lot of drugs. If you need a lot of drugs, you can have them. But they are very helpful and they do not hurt your body. Okay? So I really appreciate the difference when I was on their board and it was about dying, and now it's about comfort. As long as you need comfort. Okay? So don't hesitate to call your doctor. That's how you get hospice. You call the doctor and say blah, 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 and the doctor probably knows all of it already. And how soon can we have hospice? The staff are wonderful. And we had for January, February, so for a 9 weeks. And by the time Bill passed, they felt like our kids because they're young nurses. So, call hospice when you need them by going to your doctors and letting them know what's going on. Make a plan. Because there's enough symptoms going on with us that we know things are getting slower. Okay? So make a plan. Your children will really appreciate it if you have a plan. If the kids are a long ways away, call them and let them know that you're making a plan and you're happy about it and you want them to honor it. Okay? I want to tell you a story. This incident happened with my first parish when I had just started at Faith Lutheran here in Everett. And a dear friend that had been a colleague of Bill's was dying. He was in the hospital. His son, who was 40-ish, was sitting with me there. It was just the two of us. And there wasn't any lights on in the room. There was a big picture window across to the Providence. And so you could see out the window, and it was light outside. You could see if there was a light on in the hallway, but there was no light on in the room. So I was sitting close to the bed in the center, and his son was sitting at the foot. You know, when someone is, how many of you sat with someone who's dying? Now I know why you're here. There's a lot of joy in getting to be a part of the comings and goings in life. And we get so happy with births. Well, this is a birth too. It's our birth into heaven. Okay, so we're in the room. And the gentleman is taking the heavy breathing, heavy breathing, heavy breathing, last breath. And I'm looking into his face, and out of his forehead came a small, bright blue light. It went across the bed, out the window, and then zoomed up.
Sir.
Okay, you weren't supposed to be. That blue light has stayed with me forever. When Bill passed, and then I went to our grief journey group, I told that story. And after I finished, a man's voice in the room said, "Are you going to tell them about the blue light?" And it was his son. He's a member of this church. We've known each other for years, but never did we talk about the blue light. I mean, it was one of those things that felt so sacred. And how do you talk about it? You don't do it over coffee. Groups like this. It's good. But that has always stayed with me. My grandmother was a doula for babies. So they would go when she would go when somebody was gonna be born, and she would help the family and help deliver the baby. My grandma also was a doula for the dying. And for all of you who are really, you've done this before, if somebody needs you, go. It's a wonderful opportunity to help a family get through it. Because some people don't understand as much as we are understanding about who we are and what heaven is about. But we wait until that day, the one that's been set for us. These, can I stand over here? These are the specific texts that Bill and I use. And Psalm 139, 118 is never alone. And when the day comes, you're still with God. This is Corinthians 13. You know this one that happens at every wedding. This is about love, patient and kind. 2 Corinthians 12:2 is about, I put my note here, it just is about in or out. Do you know which one that is? That's when Paul said, and it sounds like he's talking about another person and their experience, but everybody that reads it thinks it's about him. And what he says is, well, I don't know if I was in my body or out of my body, but I went to the third heaven. And then he starts talking about that. These are fun to read. Then John 14 through 1-4. I love this one. It's my favorite. It's when Jesus is talking to Thomas. You know Thomas. Doubting Thomas. Well, how often in a day do you have doubts? We're all a little bit like him. This one is the one that it's stuck in my mind for years and years. And it's because I love it so much. Jesus says, and you know the way to the place I'm going. You know the place I'm going. And of course, Gavin Thomas said, what the heck are you talking about? We are more than we think we are. The Revelations in the first 11 verses are all John. We think it was John that wrote this book about heaven. Revelation. And then Luke 20 is Jesus saying, we will be like the angels. When I found that one, I thought, oh no, that's my favorite. Does that mean I get wings? Or have we just made that part up? And it also says, and you don't have to do this again. You don't have to come back and do this again. Doesn't that just give you chills? Every day, every moment, we are surrounded by heaven. We don't have to wait to go up there or over there or wherever. We are surrounded by heaven. I remember as a little girl, mother talking about, you have a guardian angel. I thought, oh, that's nice. But as I've grown older, again, I love them because it's not just for people that go to church. If you're a drunk on the street and you have no place to go, you probably got two angels with you. Do you have any questions or comments you want to make before I go on to the next part? No. Okay. Bill and I had been married 8 years. We had a 5-year-old, that was Christina, and a 2-year-old, Adam. My father died, and I wasn't surprised because he had 2 heart attacks. What I was surprised was after I'd made 3 trips to take family members to view the body, then my 5-year-old, Christina, she was so brilliant, she scared me to death when she was a baby. And I've told you that story sometimes too. She came over and she said, Mom, I want to go. So I took her down to the funeral home so she could see Grandpa. Got a little chair for her to stand on. She leans over and she goes, Mom, he's not there. He is not there. And I think she's 5 years old and she knows that. We appreciate these bodies, but we get to the point where we think, I'm ready. So we could not figure out what kind of birth control to use at one point in our marriage. Well, I'm just going to talk about it. So my doctor, good Catholic man, was recommending the brand new Dalton Shield. If you remember that one, there ended up to be a long, what was it? They were sued because everything about it was made up. So I had mine, and then I got pregnant with it there, which my mother had told me about before. She says, honey, if Bill puts his pants on the bed, you're going to get pregnant. Yeah, it's a thing in my family. So the Dalton Shield was then a problem because I was pregnant. And I asked my doctor, what do we do now? And he says, well, we can't take it out or it will abort the baby. He said, there may not be any problem at all. Well, at the beginning of the 7th month, I went into labor. Angela lived for 14 hours. For 14 hours. And what I didn't realize was why in the world was she there? She was there to save me. I had no pain at all because of the Dalton Shield. And many women died. because it created an infection, and the infection was also in my uterus. So she was my angel. Ever since that experience, I've always thought about angels. Most couples who lose a child, 8 out of 10 divorce. That's how hard it is. It just destroys your heart. So, at 26 years old, I began studying about death and dying. And it's a subject I've always loved ever since Angela came. She was not a mistake. How old were you when you lost someone to death? How old? Were you a child? Were you a teenager? An adult? Just shout out. Who did you lose and how old were you? I was a teenager and lost my grandfather. Your grandfather when you were a teenager? Was 10. 10? When my aunt. Your aunt died. And 13 when my mother passed. And 21 when my father passed. You studied this a little bit yourself. Others? I was 9 when your grandmother died. Grandfather. Okay. You were 4. You were 4 when who died, hon? Your mother. Oh Lord. That was a hard road. That was a hard road. It's interesting the roads we do walk in this life. And when death comes in, it changes everything for the road we're on. Each of these will teach you more about death and dying, and especially the joyful parts of it. It's all joy. We think about it because, let me say this. When my grandmother was going around to people's houses to take care of the birthing or the birthing of heaven, everybody talked about death. It wasn't something that you have to look up in a book because it was so much more present. When my mother was born, she was the 14th pregnancy that my grandmother had. Yeah, she had a couple of miscarriages. I had one two. And every time you get excited about heaven coming to you, and then it turns out to be, no, that's not going to work. It changes us every time we experience it. But part of the reason is because we learn so much from love on the one hand and the absence on the other. We learn. when Angela died, I could find one book on death and dying. That's the name of the book. And I wanted something that would teach me. And I didn't want the church teaching me, because Jesus does everything in the church, right? I wanted to know what medicine was saying about death. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross, a doctor, a woman, and she is the person right up here who basically started the hospice process. Because in her book, she talked about the fact that children often know before they're going to die, because they're talking to heaven. That's something my mother told me too, more than once. She said, babies and toddlers are talking to heaven for sometimes years. One of mine, never mind. It's a side story. So the focus of hospice has changed, and it's because of this wonderful woman, Dr. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross. The book is still in print, but she also has this one. This is my favorite. It's called The Tunnel and the Light. Have you heard about the tunnel and the light? Well, we now have 10 million people in the United States who have had near-death experiences and come back to tell the story. You can watch them on YouTube. You've got that channel? Yeah. But for years and years, I've studied this, and now we have 10 million people in the United States who have been vetted. They've told their story, and there are people that have also witnessed what they went through. There are 3 million in Germany. So next week, we'll talk more about the tunnel and the light. But both of these books, this is also a Kubler-Ross book. She talks about all of the cases that she dealt with where young people, children, would begin to talk about going to heaven. She also talks about other cases. She was a hospitalist. So as a doctor only working in the hospital, she had hundreds and hundreds of experiences with death and dying. And she found the beautiful side of it. Yes, the beautiful side. What were you hoping to get when you came today? What do you need to know? What do you want to know?
And I've experienced some of this myself, but I think I was looking for the joy in the sorrow.
Okay, the joy in what?
In the sorrow, when someone is dying.
Yeah. So, have you had a sorrowful time?
Well, the most recent death was my mom, was about 1.5 years ago, and although it's better than it was, there's still some, some waves of like, not here.
Yes, yes. It's interesting because when it's an intimate relationship with someone, it's interesting what you think about. Yeah. I only had one of those in the 60 years where it just kept coming back, and I had to think about it, and I had to work it through, and I had to talk about it, and but it was after the negative experience of losing a child. So Bill was like depressed for a couple of years, me too. Yeah. It was a really hard time. But the angels were in the house and things worked out. For you, what are you on the joy side yet, or are you on the sorrow side still?
I think it was, my mom died of cancer and we knew it was coming, but she was ready to go. So she was, she was able to hide how bad it was, I think. She was like fairly functional, almost right at the end.
Everything was fine.
Yeah, and she wasn't denying it, and we did have hospice. And I was able to, it was really easy for me to take up her because that happened in the summer, and so I was with her the whole time, but it was, what? The doctor said 3 months, and actually it was 3 weeks, so it was like super fast.
So when did hospice come?
Right. So,
Did she have them for 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just say, once the person that's leaving knows that you're okay, they will leave. They stay as long as they can to make sure you're okay. And that's in every country. My undergraduate degree was in cultures and ethics. And it's amazing how alike we are from country to country. Sometimes, in fact, I just had a former member from one of my churches call me just to let me know her husband was passing. And I gave her a little bit of information, which was, keep things quiet, talk as little as possible unless they're chatting, which occasionally happens. And then walk out and go do something in the kitchen and give them time to do what they need to do. And they may leave their body. It's all on God's time at the end of it anyway. It's all on God's time. Other thoughts that you want to share? Other questions? Yes.
Sharing, I had a dear friend who was in hospice, and her family said one of the wonderful things of hospice for her was that the hospice nurses would listen to her concerns that she couldn't express to her family. The things in her heart, the things that were in her heart, but that she just couldn't talk to her family about it. But needed to talk to somebody.
Yes.
People who are wonderful at that.
Yes, yes. The hospice is the best friend you can have on the block when someone's dying. And it's all paid for. There's no charge. It's what?
I said, so far.
That's another subject, isn't it? Well, no, there's no cost to the family. It's paid for by Medicare. Yeah. Okay. Other comments or questions? Ah,
I know it's a gift to be with someone as they're leaving, that it's joyful. But what about a sudden tragic death? How do you find the joy in that?
That's on the sorrow side, because only for one reason. It terrifies everyone. When we're not ready for it. It's exhausting. All the work to let everybody know what's going on. It's just a tragedy of any kind is a tragedy. The good news in it are the hugs, are taking care of one another, seeing to it that the family has care when something tragic happens suddenly. Because it just destroys our ability to think. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed. But now remember, there's a whole another side of this that has to do with why we're here and when we're leaving. It may have already been determined that something terrible would happen. And that's hard for me to believe, because that's not a life I would choose. More on that later. Any other comments to what we've talked about so far? If you would like, I will have these all printed up for next week. And then you can read them at home. Everybody's starting to look tired. I've got 10 more minutes, but you can be on your way if you want to go. There's blue lights, there's joys. The more you plan for the way you want to go to heaven, make sure you talk to your family. Not because you think it's going to be tomorrow, but because you want them to know the 3, 4, 5, 6 things that you want to have happen. Do you want them to be by your bedside? Do you want to say, no, you live in Colorado, so don't worry. I'll get to heaven without you, and I love you, and don't worry about it. Some people can't afford to travel. Write down the things that you want, and make sure somebody in the family knows about them. Okay.
That's the 5 wishes that we will be studying next week.
For next week, yeah.
We did that with my wife.
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, yes.
And as she was dying, they wanted to take her to the hospital. And I turned to the refrigerator and said, this is where she signed it. The doctor signed it as well.
Yeah.
And they said, we see that and we have to abide by that and pay.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I worked with hospice, and the hospice nurse came in at the very last moment. And the last day of Betty's life, there was no communication, just crashing back and forth. And she asked us to leave the room. And then we came back.
The hospice nurse asked
Yes,
you to leave.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And then she said, after we came back, she says she is ready to die.
Yeah.
And we felt like she was not telling the truth. And then finally we got to the point of saying, ready to say that to her, while she could probably say it to us.
Exactly. It's a real burden to be in a room and beg them to stay. It's a burden to cry because they see your tears. And they love you, but they're working. Do you realize that death is a job? Yeah. And you're trying to pay attention to something beyond. Some people see family members and you don't. Some people have regrets and they don't want to tell you about it, but they want to tell someone. So it is one of the things that, and when Pastor Deb came to visit Bill, I would leave them alone. If Bill needed to say something that he didn't want me to know or hear, he had that right. And the gift. Okay? There's so much about death and dying. And at the end of it, if you plan well, it tends to go well. But remember, they don't always need us around because they have to go when they're ready and they don't want to disappoint you. Okay. I think next time we're going to talk about the tunnel and the light. We're going to talk about experiences that people have had who have themselves passed over. One story quickly. I was talking to Deb about this morning. Bill had Parkinson's, and we didn't know how long it was, but we did figure it out. One morning he got up and he said, I talked to Deb last night. Well, his dad had been dead for a number of years. And I said, oh, well, what was it like? And he said, well, it was sort of like a dream, but it was really vivid. I saw his face, and he was looking right at me. And he said to me, what are you doing here? He had crossed over the veil. He had crossed over the veil. I said, we're going to the doctor. We're going to go find out what's going on and why you're visiting the other side. And he didn't object to that. So there's wonderful stories and joy that comes for all of us once we are able to leave the old body or the body that is broken, the body that is diseased. God has thought of everything. He makes us love leaving. So, I hope to see you next week, and I hope I didn't scare you off. Blessings on your day.